Good afternoon, grinders. Welcome to Monday sort of Showdown Live. I mean, they don't change the graphics. It's a two-game slate. So, I mean, we're talking about the two-gamer, not necessarily the showdowns. So, I'm here, Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender Head, Blender HD, joined by Keith Eister Eyes, 819. Don't bother following him on Twitter. He doesn't tweet. Doesn't matter. So, we were on yesterday. Obviously, with the Chiefs game, that I was a Melvin Gordon, Drew Lock switch away from a split of and getting like $55,000. I was so close. I was just like, if Drew Lock just throws the ball to some schmuck, right? It has to be someone that doesn't beat out Le'Veon Bell, like in the last spot. It's like if he throws it to Deshaun Hamilton or something, like I could win, and it didn't happen. So I had like one of the lineups that was like in third place, but third place doesn't matter because it's like a 60-way tie and whatever. I made money even on 40 lineups, but it was so close. It was very close.
Nice. Yeah, game goes 15 points under the total or something like that. Harrison Butker outscores Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, just like we all thought it would go.
Right. I play for the scenarios that people don't think it'll go, and I'll benefit in that scenario. So we got the YouTube chat going here. Hit the thumbs up button. Thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Hit whatever you want. It helps us out. It sends the signals to the YouTube gods that we're cool, I guess. But now we have a two-game slate to talk about. But it kind of plays like Showdown. So we have to think in terms of, in large field contests, uniqueness. I know I constantly bang on that drum. And also, it's a classic formatted slate. So it's not like a Showdown where, well, who's going to be in your captain slot? So actually, sometimes the combinations actually go down on two-game slates more so than on showdowns where we have limited player pools. So the two games coming up are the Steelers and Washington, and then we got Buffalo versus San Francisco. My overall strategy for two-game slates for large field GPPs is super stacking, because most people don't do it. Most people will play one quarterback with two pass catchers, a run back or two, kind of, and then pick and choose. Like, I'm much more likely to say I'm focusing on this game, having a quarterback, three teammates, and then running it back with two or three guys from the other side of the game. And then I just have like one or two pieces from the other game, and hopefully they're the right ones. Is that the approach that you're taking this slate?
Yep, definitely. I love the correlation. If you get one of the games to hit, and there's a lot more offense in that game than the other game, and you're on the right game, then you're golden. All your lineups are going to beat anybody that's heavy on the other game. So, yeah, I definitely like the correlation on the two-game slates. And according to Slate IQ, the four-person stack, so a quarterback and three of his players, is our best leverage spot to attack. So, yep.
Right, we're just we blindly go by the data, and I'm just like, well, the data says that's what it should be. And then we also have the issue of duplication with salary. So, and especially on a slate like this, where they've kept the pricing soft enough, where you could spend all. I mean, you're gonna if you want to get different, you can't spend yourself like you literally cannot make an Alex Smith stack this slate and leave but less than 1,000 on the table. Like it's literally impossible. You could pay up in every spot and still not hit 49K. We know that a lot of more casual players, not necessarily you guys that are watching out on YouTube or listening in the RG app, may just, they feel like you need to spend all the salary. If you're going to ask a question of how much salary is viable to leave on the table, if you're playing large field GPPs, like 8,000 is fine. I mean, like you absolutely can to be different. And we've seen plenty of games where someone like Stephon Diggs or Terry McLaurin or some of these higher price options just don't get there. I mean, they get points, but they just like 12 points from that price. Like some other cheaper guy has 18, and no longer Diggs is optimal anymore. And like the 3K guy, Ray McLeod has a 50-yard touchdown reception, and like he'll be optimal for 4,500 less. And those are going to be the lineups that win. You're going to be uncomfortable doing it. But in large field, You should be considering that more. In small field stuff, Keith, like, since you play typically more towards the optimal, like trying to find the optimal, uh, are you more likely to, like, as long as you get different in like one or two spots, like you're fine? Because I mean, like Allen plus Diggs is going to be popular. Roethlisberger plus Deontay Johnson. Benny Snell is going to be super chalk at a really bad running back position this slate. Like, are you more likely in smaller field stuff to just like eat the chalk and then just find the Ray McLeod or Kendrick Bourne or some low owned guy as your one off in like a 500 to 1,000 person field?
Yeah, I'm not even sure in that small of a field you need to go off the board that much. I think if you do the super stack like we talked about, that's already pretty unique, and not many people are going to do that. And then if you do something like a double tight end or even 4 wide receivers, that's also going to get you even more unique. So you may not even have to go all the way down to one of the uglier off the board plays, but just do it with more of a unique construction than what everybody else is doing.
Okay, well, we have these two games. We have Steelers against Washington. That's the 43 and a half total. The 49ers Bills, that's a 47 and a half total. I mean, these aren't like one game is not like the pop out. Like, we don't have a game that's a 55 total and the other game's a 41, where it's like very clear and obvious what's the most likely to shoot out. And plus, the term shootout is all relative, right? If one game there's only 23 points scored and the other game has 45, well, the 45 game is the shootout game of the slate. Right. I mean, like that. It's all in relation to one another. Between the two games, from a probability standpoint, which one are you more likely to target? Or do you think that the field is going to look at... I think the field is going to play Buffalo and Pittsburgh together and not stack as much. And we're going to do this type of stuff where if I'm going to stack the first game, that means like I'm fading Buffalo. If I'm going to stack the second game, that means I'm probably not playing Steelers. Which one seems more appealing to you?
The later game, Buffalo and San Francisco, is the one that I think has more potential to shoot out. A couple of factors there. Pittsburgh has a really good defense. Washington has a really good pass rush. So I just respect the defenses in the first game a little bit more. And then the spread is a lot closer in the second game as well. So we have more of a chance for back and forth. And when we see that type of game script, they play faster and there's typically more fantasy points involved.
Well, I mean, we have, I mean, all the chalk. I mean, the Steelers, I mean, taking a look at ownership on this slate. I mean, we have Diggs, the highest owned players that we have currently in projected ownership are Diggs, Snell, Gibson, Johnson, McLaurin, Mostert, Ebron in the tight end position, Juju. So we kind of have like Pittsburgh wide receivers and the running back, right? I mean, pretty much the entire Steelers offense is chalk. And then we have Allen and Diggs. And then obviously McLaurin and Gibson on the Washington side. But if you notice, I'm not mentioning many 49ers that are appearing up there. But it's most likely due to the fact that they don't have as condensed of an offense. So, like, yes, Deebo Samuel, but you also have Brandon Ayuk. You also have Kendrick Bourne in the slot. You also have Jordan Reed and Ross Dwelley there at tight ends. You have a 17-headed running back committee that could possibly be Mostert and Wilson and McKinnon. Is Coleman? We're not even going to know if Coleman's even going to be
active. He's expected back this week, I think. So
oh, great. So now we have another running back. People aren't going to want to try to guess which one. They're more likely to say, I'll take a shot on one, rather than, well, I'm going to play Nick Mullins with 3 of them. So, like, I'm telling you what I'm doing is that I'm going heavy on the San Francisco side. I think it's more likely that the 49ers could put up 30-plus points on the Bills than Washington puts up 30-plus points on the Steelers. And for the prices, like, I don't mind. I could still play anyone I want, even with the 49ers prices, that compared to ownership, Like I'm just gonna go there. I mean, it doesn't. You don't feel good clicking on Nick Mullins' name, but wouldn't you rather play Nick Mullins than Alex Smith?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I would definitely rather play Mullins over Smith. A couple hours ago, I was thinking I was going to have to eat a lot of Josh Allen chalk. That's kind of the spot I was looking to attack. We talked about it pre-show. This total is actually moved to the spread is actually moved to the 49ers side. So the 49ers are now favored in the game, and I think I'm going to play a lot more Mullins than I had originally intended. So I was always attacking this game, but now I kind of like the other side of it even more than the original side that I was on.
Right, because I don't mind necessarily eating the Diggs ownership if he's on the opposite side. If I'm playing Mullins plus Ayuk plus Reed plus something like that, and then Diggs is my one-off from the Bills. Like I feel like I don't mind eating a 66-70% owned guy in that case. But when you're playing the Allen plus Diggs, it feels like how do I get different there?
Right, that's what most people are going to do.
Right, and that I want to do what less people are going to do.
Yeah,
Also, a lot of people may not realize that although this game is listed as Bills at 49ers, they're playing the game in Arizona in the dome. So it's not going to be cold. It's going to be on the fast track. Obviously, the total reflects that. We don't necessarily look at Bills 49ers as, oh, 47 is probably higher than normal. We would normally look at that as a 44-45 total. So I'm hoping that people don't necessarily realize that the conditions are better than playing outdoors in Pittsburgh.
yeah, definitely. And I think another thing is the way Buffalo really has no interest in stopping the run. They kind of lean more to stop the pass, so they can run on them. And the 49ers want to run. So the way the 49ers play versus how the Bills play defense, I think sets up really well for the 49ers to have some success.
But the question comes in about the running backs on the 49ers. Obviously, Mostert leads, but I mean, we saw in their last game, he still only got 40% of the snaps. I mean, like, we're not talking about a committee where like one guy gets a predominant amount. We saw Jeff Wilson get 12 carries. What do you think the impact to Tevin Coleman will be? Do you think Tevin Coleman comes in and takes Wilson's snaps? Does he split? I mean, because it's more likely that Jerick McKinnon is like the third down back. Like he's the pass catching back. It's more of the who gets the carries, who gets the snaps that Mostert is not in. And that has been
Yeah,
Jeff Wilson, but it could easily just go back to Tevin Coleman.
yeah, I agree. I think McKinnon is a third down back, and you don't consider you can play him in a game script where you have the 49ers losing. I think that's the script that he fits in. So I don't mind McKinnon in like a Josh Allen stack where you have the Bills really the ones running up the points. So then it comes down to Mostert, Coleman, and Wilson. I wouldn't be surprised if we get one of these guys inactive, just as a healthy scratch. And it's Ben Wilson early in the year when all four of them were healthy. Um, but I don't know if they'll carry four active running backs or not. So we'll have to wait on inactives for that. If they are all active, I think it's pretty clear that they value Mostert as the lead back. So he's probably the one I would target. But yeah, it's definitely a muddy situation.
One thing that you can do, since that is the late game, is utilize late swap. Especially if you're not spending all your salary. I don't even think you have to like worry that much because we have Coleman at 4,400, McKinnon at 4,100, and Wilson at 4,000. Obviously, Mostert is 5,800. He's more expensive, but you could plug in like worst case scenario, plug a ton of Tevin Coleman into your lineups, and then see who's active and who's inactive, and then you could just bring Coleman down to Wilson or down to McKinnon. And obviously, if you're leaving a ton of money on the table, you could do whatever the hell you want because you could go up and down 300, $400 anyway. And they're going to come in lower owned. I mean, we currently have Coleman at 7%, McKinnon at 9%, Wilson at 1%. Like, you're going to need some type of play like that, especially on a slate where it's quite possible no running back scores more than 12 points this slate. Right? I mean, like, if none of these running backs get in the end zone, like, how does any of these guys really score anything?
Yeah, and I mean we'll talk about receivers in a second here, but there's a ton of wide receivers that I want to play. I think every one of my lineups is going to have 2 running backs and only 2 running backs. So in the flex, I'm going to be 100% wide receiver or tight end.
And then we have to continue on the running back talk. Like Snell is going to probably be more of a bell cow type, 75+% snaps. But McFarland still comes out, to spell him and on third downs, and he'll catch some passes out of the backfield. So like if I'm playing a lineup without Snell, I think playing McFarland in that lineup would be useful. I wouldn't play Snell and McFarland together. And the same could be said with Gibson and McKissick, right? Like if I think McKissick is underowned. I think people look at the past 2 games and go, "Oh, they're just going to allow Gibson to play all these snaps." But like Washington's been in fairly competitive games recently. We haven't really seen the last time we've seen the football team be down 2 or 3 touchdowns. It's been McKissick getting 14 targets out of the backfield. So at 4,500 at a weak running back position, because I mean we're talking about the Steelers defense. Right, the Steelers are the top-rated defense in the entire league. So, am I all that comfortable paying $6,500 for Antonio Gibson, who, if he doesn't have a touchdown, I mean, do you need to pay? I mean, do you need it? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah, with Gibson, the ownership number we have on him right now too is way up there. We have him as the second highest owned running back, and the Steelers defense you talked about, it's really good. So I don't have any interest in Gibson. I expect Pittsburgh to win the game pretty easily. And in that game script, I'm going to have a lot more McKissick than I do Gibson. As far as Benny Snell goes, I'm not sure that he's very good is part of the problem. And Washington's defense is pretty good. So I don't really like Benny Snell very much either. And we have him projected as the highest owned running back.
How about the Buffalo guys? I mean, it seems like Moss is getting more snaps than Singletary, but Singletary is more likely to catch passes out of the backfield. But, I mean, they're both cheap. And obviously you have to concern yourself with touchdown equity because Allen could just run it in himself. I think the Buffalo running backs make sense in Mullins stacks without playing Allen because they're going to be negatively correlated with Allen's ceiling if you assume his ceiling is tied to rushing touchdowns. So, like, I don't like Buffalo running backs. I don't like running backs on this entire slate. So it's like there's no one I like, but you have to play 2 of them, and you could play 3 of them, but you have to play at least 2 of them on DraftKings. So like if I'm gonna not like running backs, like I want to spend down as much as possible and just hope someone falls in the end zone, or it could be that 8 points from Zach Moss is good enough. Like that, you're fine. I mean, just like the running back position becomes the tight end position where it's just like whatever, no one significantly outscores anyone, and it's not going to be as pivotal to winning a GPP. But if you had to choose between Moss and Singletary, which one would it be?
I don't know how to choose between them. I'll probably mix a little of both in. But my lean right now is I'm just going to take a stab that Mostert is the lead back in San Francisco. I like San Francisco's chances to be successful on the ground. So I'll probably lean heavy on Mostert, fade Gibson and Snell, go heavy on McKissick for sure, and then mix in both Singletary and Moss is kind of how I'm viewing the running back pool right now.
Okay, and then let's go to wide receivers. We have Donnie Watson in the chat. He's concerned. He's concerned about Mullins. That the past 3 straight games, 35 pass attempts, he hasn't hit 14 DK points. Do we care about what happened the past 3 games?
I don't.
Right, me neither.
Doesn't mean that's going to happen this week.
Right. It has no effect on what's going to happen this week. And we only have 4 quarterbacks to choose from.
Yeah,
right?
It's 2 games.
Right, it's 2 games. It is 11-game slate. I'm probably not talking about the 49ers stack. Right? We take a look at projected ownership. Allen, 42%. Roethlisberger, 35%. Mullins, 15%. Alex Smith, 7%. So compared to ownership, like if Mullins is 50% owned, I go, why are people rostering him? But at 15%, like why not? I mean, he's directly opposite Allen. So if he outscores Allen for 2,200 less, like Allen ain't going to be in the optimal. So like to me, it's a straightforward type of, you're doing it for leverage. You're not doing it because you think that that Mullins is going to outscore Josh Allen. It's just a matter of how often does that happen versus how much money you make in doing so. Although in that Buffalo game, I could see a contrarian approach playing Allen with 2 or 3 pass catchers and one of them not being Diggs. Are you considering lineups like that?
I am, yeah. And I mean, the ownership on Diggs is getting to the point where I'm considering a fade on Diggs. And I like Diggs a lot. I think he's going to have a good game. But the ownership is really getting up there. The price is up there. That doesn't really matter for us. But we've really seen Beasley catch a lot of balls in the past, and we've seen Gabriel Davis emerge a little bit here recently. So I don't mind running like Beasley and Davis with Allen. And then also you have the upside that Allen could run 2 in. So if I'm going to skinny stack, it's going to be with Allen. If I play Allen and one of his receivers that's not Diggs, and just hope that Allen runs 2 in.
Right. You could also take a shot on like an Isaiah McKenzie. He doesn't see that many snaps, but typically when he's in, he's doing some type of gadget play. A goal line, jet sweep type of thing. So that's a flyer. I'm just saying, like, the Bills are going to be chalky. So, like, how is there a way for me to play Allen and not have a chalky lineup? We could say the same thing with the Steelers. So if I'm going to play Ben Roethlisberger, most people, especially with the salary constraints not being that high this slate, they're going to go Roethlisberger and take 2 of Juju, Claypool, Deontay Johnson, and maybe throw in Ebron also into that. We have James Washington at 2% owned and McLeod at 1% owned. They typically Juju and Deontay play like almost all the snaps. Like they're typically out there all the time. Claypool's out there 60 to 70% of the time. And then you get James Washington and Ray McLeod out there. For their prices, for the construction, leaving salary on the table, one big play, Washington and McLeod could they could be if you're going to stack with Roethlisberger, I think I'm more likely to not do I'm going to take Deontay and Juju, or Juju and Claypool, or I'd rather take one of those 3 guys and then take Washington, McKenzie, take Vance McDonald in your tight end spot instead of Ebron, right? I mean, he's gotten, I think, 2 targets like the entire year, but today could be the day. You never know. I mean, especially on the goal line, right? You have those play action plays where some, the backup tight end, that type of play. I mean, I don't know how much Roethlisberger I'm going to play, but I feel like Roethlisberger, like with a Washington and a McLeod, I think that it's kind of weird to say that I prefer those guys at their ownership versus like Gabriel Davis and Isaiah McKenzie, like than the Allen guy. It seems like I could get more different with Roethlisberger stacked. Because remember, if I'm playing a super stack, I'm playing 3. So
Right.
maybe I could still play 2 of Johnson's Juju and Claypool, but my third guy is Washington or McLeod or Vance McDonald, where Ben still puts up, throws for 4 touchdowns, and I just get all 4 of them, and people are tilting when the second one goes to, James Washington, and he's sitting there, especially with the running backs, right? The running back scoring could be so low that he's sitting there, in place of a flex position, and he's sitting there with 10 points because he went 2. It's a big play. So it's, 1 for 40 with a touchdown. That's 11 points for 3K. And he outscores other players that are way higher owned. So, I mean, that is I think I'm more likely to take routes on the Steelers and the Bills like that than take the secondary guys from, like, we could talk about Washington, right? We have McLaurin as the obvious option. But then we got guys like both Sims and Isaiah Wright. And I mean, obviously you got Logan Thomas, but you also have but Hemingway, the second tight end. I just see that I don't expect Washington to put up as many points. So I don't think as many of them are available. And if I'm not stacking Alex Smith, do I see a need to play a ton of these guys? I mean, yeah, you could throw in, one of these 3K Washington guys, but like if I'm not stacking Alex Smith, like do I see a point in playing them?
Probably not. It gets really thin down there with the Washington secondary options. Going back to Pittsburgh, I think, especially with Roethlisberger, Deontay Johnson, and Juju, and even Ebron, those four, their ownership relative to their expected production is not worth it for me.
It's nuts. It's I mean they're the chalk of all chalks.
Yeah,
If the
I mean,
Steelers
one
if the
clear
Steelers go
stand-
out and put up 42 points, you win with those lineups. Then I'm gonna lose. Like then
Right.
that I'm fine with that. But if you just look at their median projection compared to the ownership, like they don't even project. Like Washington's defense isn't bad.
Right.
So
and,
like
and there's three really standout plays, and if the Claypool ownership really comes in and half of what it is on Juju and Deontay, then I think Claypool is the standout play of all of them. But I think it'll creep up there a little bit closer. People like Claypool. They like to play him. They've seen the big plays from him. They're scheming plays for him on the goal line. So I think Claypool picks up a bit more ownership than we have him projected for right now.
right, the lowest owned team on this slate, wide receiver wise, are the 49ers. And they have a implied team total that's only a quarter point lower than the Steelers. The problem with the 49ers is that obviously they're a more run heavy team. But Deebo Samuel at 6,000, Ayuk at 5,100, Kendrick Bourne in the slot, 3,500. You got Jordan Reed, Ross Dwelly. You obviously got the running backs. Like Deebo Samuel is projected 25% owned. Ayuk 17. But if you look at their medians just in projections, like Deebo Samuel has a median in the blitz of 14.37. Juju has a lower median, right? Based on the blitz. I mean, it's not like it's bad, but I mean, Juju is 300 cheaper, has a 1 point lower median, and is going to be almost twice as owned. So, like from a math perspective, like how do I not play Deebo over Juju?
Yeah, Debo's my favorite play on the slate. I think people haven't seen him all year, but I mean, just last week we saw him explode. We don't really know where the target share is going to end up, but if it's anything like I think he had double-digit targets last week. I remember 13 targets last week, 11 receptions, 133 yards.
Right. Understand that Ayuk was out.
Yeah.
So we have to always take that into consideration.
Yeah,
I still like him. I'm just pointing out the context that Ayuk was out the last game.
Yeah. First time all year, I think that Ayuk and Deebo and Bourne have been on the field together. Maybe there was one other game, but it hasn't been very often.
And of course, we got we got a Washington slate, so I can't not get a question in the chat about Jeremy Sprinkle. I think he got 2 snaps. Hemingway has been playing over him as the second tight end, so like now he becomes real. He was thin before, like now he becomes like I don't even know if I include him in my player pool type of thin.
Yeah, I won't have any Sprinkle.
Okay, defenses. I know defense doesn't matter because it's so variant. Okay, the question with 2-game slates. Does correlation with defense matter? And I think a lot of people that use optimizers, as well as if you hand build, typically don't like playing a defense against their offensive players. Me, I don't care. Like defensive scoring is so variant that, I mean, look at the Thanksgiving 2-game slate. Texans defense and the Texans stack.
Yeah.
And that's why the Texans defense was low owned, because people didn't play them together. So like on this slate, like I literally to me it doesn't even I'm not even consider it's just whatever fits in whatever ends up in the lineup just ends up, and if I happen to be whatever, like it just makes me more unique. Right? Is there any are you setting a max offensive defensive? Because if I'm playing super stacks, obviously I'm playing 1 quarterback and 3 pass catchers. So that's 4 players. Do you mind playing a super stack of 4 players and then playing the opposing defense also?
I don't mind. No. I think it's fine to play as many players as you want against the defense. It's on the 2-game slate. Now, I wouldn't do that on a main slate. If I had even a double stack, I probably wouldn't want the defense on a main slate. But on a 2-game slate, anything can happen. They could give up 40 points, but they get a pick six, and they're still the optimal defense. So I'm just going to play it by ownership. It looks like we have the Steelers as massive chalk right now, which normally I would look at it and say, yeah, the Steelers probably are the most likely to score the most points. But I'm just going to play it as ownership. So what I'll go in and I'll set a minimum to make sure that I'm over the field on Washington, San Francisco, and Buffalo, and that will naturally get me lower than the field on Pittsburgh. But outside of that, no, I'm not going to try to guess who scores the most.
Right, and especially on a slate where if you're not playing Diggs or you're not playing Allen, like you could play the Steelers defense all you want. I mean, like salary's not an issue. So I could see a lot of lineups that I make where I'm playing it's a lineup of $48,000 in salary and it still has the 49ers defense, like it still has the Washington defense there. Even though I could pay up for the Steelers and use up all my salary, I'm not going to want to do like that. May be a lineup that already exists somewhere. I don't want to be duplicated in $1 million contest. So like I'm going to have lineups. I'm going to have lineups that leave $6,000 of salary on the table. So, I mean, I'm going to have lineups that leave $6,000 on the salary on the table and still have the Steelers defense in it, right? So, like, I think if you're building lineups for large field GPPs especially, if you're asking yourself, is this too much? Is it whatever you think is too much is not even close to as much as you, like, when people ask me, like, can I leave 2,000 on the table? Like, dude, you could leave 8,000 on the table. Yeah. Right? It's like, can I play like 4 or 5 guys from the same team? I'm like, dude, you can play 6 guys from this. Like, always think in terms of like on these types of slates. That's what most people are thinking. Going, I think I played too many of this. Like, no, that makes it more unique. You should double tight end lineups on this slate. Tight end's horrible, right? No one wants to play the running backs. Then play 3 running backs. Maybe play running backs of the same team together. Play Singletary and Moss. Who's going to do that? They're negatively correlated, but you never know. One gets a touchdown, the other gets a touchdown. Josh Allen busts because of that scenario. The 49ers, right? They score 4 touchdowns. It's all rushing touchdowns, and it's from 3 different running backs. That could happen. Anthony McFarland, Benny Snell. You could play them together. Antonio Gibson and McKissick. It's a 2-game slate. There's no... Like, yes, on an 11-game slate, you don't want to play. Now you have more choices. You don't have to play negatively correlated players. Here, if you want to play negatively correlated players, like, I'm not necessarily stopping. I'm only playing 40 lineups, though. So, like, if I was playing 150, I'd be playing a lot more of those types of lineups. But in 40 lineups, maybe, yes, I do make a group. Only one of Moss and Singletary. Only one of Snell and McFarland. Only one of Gibson and McKissick. Only one of the 8 million running backs that the 49ers have. But if you want to make a lineup with 2 of them, like, you're not nuts for doing so.
Yeah. I think in my research and everything that I looked at, this Slate IQ article is the most important thing and the most enlightening thing just on how to construct lineups and things that have won in the past. When you're talking about leaving salary on the table, I'm not sure that people understand. According to Slate IQ, 32% of the time, people have left $5,000 or more on the table, and that's what the top 0.1% of lineups. 32% of the time, they have 5,000 or more on the table left over.
Right, and that Slate IQ is a premium article. I always mention it. RotoGrinders.com/premium. If you click on the link in the YouTube description, you get $5 off your first month of Core 4. NFL, MLB, NBA coming back. That's part of it. You know, you get PGA, you get everything. You get Lineup HQ, all the features, all of everything, all the Gridiron IQ, all the projections, you get all of everything. So click, check that out. I'm not going to put up Slate IQ on the screen. I can't do it every show. We don't want to give away the premium stuff every show, but you mention a couple of stuffs, right? You mention, the stack construction for these types of slates. That's why going with the super stack. And only Ruben asks, does a super stack include a running back? And
it can.
Right.
Absolutely.
In fact, in Slate IQ, what is the 4-man super stack that has the highest leverage?
That would be the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end stack.
Right. One of each position. So if you were going to play that type of stack, the super stack, if you want to call it, Let's say you played it for the Bills. So that would be Allen plus Singletary or Moss plus Diggs plus Knox. Like that would be an example. If you played it for the Steelers, it would be Roethlisberger, Snell, Deontay, Ebron, right? If you played it for the Washington team, it would be Smith, McKissick, McLaurin, Logan Thomas. And for the 49ers, you play one of the running, you play McKinnon or Mostert and Mullins and Debo and Jordan Reed. Like that would be, that's what a lot of my lineups are going to look like, right?
Yeah.
Your lineup's going to look like that?
Absolutely.
I hope you're not in my contest, Keith. I don't want to split. If I'm going to split, as always, I'll split with you. But just you.
Okay.
Okay, just make sure. Don't tell anyone else. Jamino's in the chat, and he's going to be making ownership updates. The hamsters are working early today. The hamsters aren't used to working on a slate at 5 o'clock Eastern on a Monday. They have to wake up. Typically they sleep in on Mondays until NBA comes around. So we have to wake up the hamsters. So they're working on this ownership. I'm going to refresh. But yeah, you're right that I think Debo is going to come in higher owned. People are going to look at 13 targets last game, and he's not going to be 25% owned.
Claypool is the other one that stands out too. I mean, Debo and Claypool, I think they're going to bump up there closer to where Deontay and Juju are.
Maybe not that. I could see
not as high.
Right. I could see Claypool coming in at like 36 and Debo at like 34. Like something. I mean, it makes a difference to some extent. An extra 10 to 15% ownership. I think Beasley's going to come up. I think people are going to stack Allen. People are going to stack. Basically, the stacks are Allen and Roethlisberger. So anyone attached to all the wide receivers attached have to come up. So maybe Debo doesn't come in as high owned. But I think if people make out like the traditional stacks, like the traditional would be the 3+1, right? They're going to use Debo as the run back, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. But people are going to use Ayuk too. So if people are not double and triple stacking, if they're not triple stacking here as much as we plan to, then maybe that's the reason that you see Debo and Claypool, as nobody wants to use Mullins to stack and nobody wants to use a third piece of the stack. That's how those two get kind of left behind.
Only Ruben asks, do bringbacks in the super stacks also include running back typically, or just wide receiver, tight end? I could be anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, but we're talking about a 2-game slate. Like we're not like any. I'm most likely. We have 9 slots in your roster, right? Quarterback, 2 running back slots, 3 wide receiver, tight end, flex, and defense. I will have lineups that are 4-man, 1 quarterback, 3 pass catchers, and then 2 or 3 bringbacks. Not 1, 2 or 3 bringbacks. So that we're talking about 4 plus 3. That'll only be 2 spots, 2 or 3 other spots for the other game. So like that. And I'm considering in my head, like maybe I should I have even more? And the defense could be from that game also. I mean, it could be a much more, because obviously you have to roster players from 3 teams.
3 teams. Yeah.
Right. So you can't build a Buffalo stack and then a Pittsburgh thing, and then obviously the defense counts. So you could play the defense of the opposite side, and that's your one other type of thing. But I think a lot of people are going to build that way. I think a lot of people are going to try to, how many Bills can I get? Allen, Diggs, 2 Steelers wide receivers, and Benny Snell, and then maybe they play Jordan Reed, or it's going to be that type of lineup. Like if they get McLaurin in instead of I think that's what most of the lineups are going to look like, and I don't want to look like their lineup. I don't want to look like those lineups. I don't want to be part of the popular crew. Keith. I don't want to sit at the cool kids table. I want the lineup. I want to sit by myself with my little tray, little pizza roll, whatever they did, whatever in the cafeteria, and I'll have my lineup by myself. So if you have any questions in the YouTube chat, we'll be here for another 5 minutes. I think we could essentially went over the slate. I mean, as far as a construction standpoint. I mean, I'm not a plays type of guy, so asking me what play is better than the other. I mean, I'm just looking at projections. So,
Yep.
but it's all a matter of versus ownership. If I had to say the most probable result, the Steelers passing game, yeah, and the Bills passing. We're highly aware of that. It's just in comparison to the ownership, are they worth playing as a whole? But if you nail the right Steelers guy, like as the one-off, like let's say Claypool has 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, like maybe you just need him. Big Ben doesn't get there, right?
And that's exactly what I plan on doing. Like I'm barely going to stack Roethlisberger at all, but I will probably have either Deontay, Juju, or Claypool in almost every single line. One of them in almost every single lineup.
Right. I mean, because it makes sense. Like you want to get the one correct one.
Correct.
Add your one off from that game, and you're stacking the Bills 49ers game.
Right. So I want my Allen or Mullins stack, the same stack 3 different times with each different Pittsburgh wide receiver.
Right. And when you play when I'm playing 40 lineups, like I have to 3 of those and 3 of those and 3, like it adds up after time. And it's like that's the angle I'm taking. If the Steelers go out and destroy the football team, they gotta come up with a name. I'm tired of this. I'm thinking the Washington team, the football, the WFT. Come up with something, please. Karen Crooks asks, Blender, is the super stack more optimal with 2 bringbacks or 3? There's no more it's what they're both fine. I think obviously the more players from one game you have in your lineup, the more unique you're going to be. So just you have to compare that to the projection of the lineup. So like because less people super stack. So and obviously if less people are super stacking, even less people are super stacking and super bringbacking. I'm coming up with all the terms today, right?
Yeah, that's even more unique. I don't think few are going to have 2 on the other side. I don't think anybody's going to have 3 on the other side.
Well, I'm going to have some. Why not? Because you can play a running back. It's not 3 receivers. You're playing like 3, a running back and 2, and a tight end. Like Dawson, not like if I'm playing 49ers. Right, or a defense. Right, exactly. It's right. There you go. It's like or it's a tight end. If I have, let's say I'm playing Mullins plus Ayuk plus Samuel plus Reed, and then plus Mostert, and I'm putting him in. I could have Dawson Knox plus Diggs plus the Bills defense. I mean, like there you go. There's 3, right? QQ in the 3-entry max. If you have over 4K on the table, do you just take the highest projected last piece? He's trying to decide between Gabriel Davis or Cole Beasley.
What's our ownership? I would play that by ownership. Whichever is the lowest owned is the one that I would.
Right, and that would be Davis.
Yeah.
But Beasley projects better.
Yeah, I mean, if the rest of your lineup is super chalky, then definitely Davis. If you're very unique in other spots, then play Beasley.
Dan Jadig asks, would you consider playing Terry McLaurin with the Steelers super stack that includes James Washington?
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, he's probably the best option on Washington, so...
Yeah.
Right, and obviously you're able to fit in Terry McLaurin because you're playing James Washington instead of playing one of those 3 expensive guys, and you're probably not playing Diggs in that lineup, so that's how you're able to even afford Terry McLaurin.
Yeah. McKissick would be the other guy that I would bring it back with on stacks.
On a 2-game slate, are you more likely to increase the range of outcomes on lineup HQ? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. That's just a matter of diversification. What types of, if you're building 100 lineups and you need, instead of having the same guy, that's what unique players and randomness adds to that. It has nothing to do with the actual lineups that you make. If I know I'm going in, I'm making 40 Nick Mullins stacks. I actually want very little diversification because, like, I know I'm going in. My strategy is to not be diverse. My strategy is I want to nail the Nick Mullins stack that wins, and I want as many outs as possible. And if Nick Mullins fails, then all my lineups fail. But then you have to accept the fact that you're going to lose all your money in that spot.
Yeah, but the rotating of the one-off is plenty of diversification.
Right. If you're using a contrarian strategy like that.
Right.
Typically, you probably want to have more randomness when you're playing, like, much more chalky lineups. So you make sure that you're not throwing, like, multiple low-owned plays until like one. Because what ends up happening in lineup HQ or any optimizer, if you don't make those settings, you'll see that your low-owned plays that you're choosing to play end up like together in lineups at the bottom, and then the chalky play, like you look, it's like cash lineups at the top, and then at the very bottom is like ultra contrarian. So in order to stop that from happening, so it gets evenly, your lower owned players gets evenly distributed, you use tools like the range of outcomes, like unique players, like the ownership caps. Like those are blunt tools in order to stop, so you don't have chalk together and then contrarian together, those types of things. And Daniel Johnson says playing the defense against your stack and hope for that pick six and more production for your stack it equals optimal. Right? I mean, in an optimal situation, since ceilings from defenses come from touchdowns, I mean, if anything, playing the defense against your offense is almost correlative to ceiling.
On a 2-game slate, maybe. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I think we're good. Right? We answered some question in the YouTube chat. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Do you get notifications? I've never used the YouTube notifications. Do you get does it go bong when we go live or something? It must do something like that. You have no idea.
I do have a couple. Yeah, on your phone it pops up. I know that. It doesn't do anything on the computer. I don't think.
But even on your phone, it doesn't go bong. It doesn't go bong or anything, or it's just whatever notification you set it to.
Yeah, you get like a push notification.
Oh, okay. So it's very similar to the RG app. You should download in the App Store the RotoGrinders app, and it does the same thing. We send out a notification every time the show goes live. You'll get a notification like that. You could listen to the shows in the app. So you don't need to be on YouTube. You could just listen to the audio. A lot of times on Sunday mornings, I mean, I'm not watching Dean's face. I'm just listening to him because I need. If I'm going to look at something awful, I'd rather look at my awful lineups than look at Dean's face. But yeah. So obviously, as I always say, if you're in my contest, I don't want you to duplicate with me. Now that I've given away, now people are going to start playing 49ers. Now I have to worry about people in the chat, people on YouTube, people listening to this, playing more of that. If it fails, then we're all losing money. So I mean, to me, that's the obvious direction to go as a contrarian play. But obviously, it's less likely to work out. So if you're going to do that, I wish you well in contests that I'm not in. And Keith, if I'm going to duplicate, it's going to likely be with you. That's
Sounds
fine.
good.
We'll split it. That's fine.
We can share.
Okay.
As long as it's like the million or something.
Right. Yeah. Right. Of course. That's all I play. I'm not playing like smaller field stuff. Right. Yeah. $500,000 each. We're good. We're good right there. So for Keith Eister, Eyes 819 DFS on Twitter. I'm Jordan Cooper at Blender HD on Twitter. And this has been Monday Semi-Showdown Live. Don't worry about the graphics. It's the Monday 2-game showdown-ish type of live show here on RotoGrinders.com.